And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
Not just big, it's yeah.
Let's go.
Welcome, and thanks for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I'm your host. Before we get into the topic of the show this week, let's do our weekly roundup of some of the big news stories going on this week. Probably the number one story of the week across the country is the vice presidential debate between Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Personally, I think it was refreshing to see the two candidates have a calm, professional debate session. It was a far cry from what we've been used to from Trump and Biden-Harris. Both candidates, for the most part, were polite, professional, and respectful to each other, and actually addressed the biggest issues to voters leading up to this election, without deferring and deflecting the topics as politicians normally so skillfully do. I'm admittedly a Republican and a Trump voter, but I don't see how from either side that anyone could say that J.D. Vance didn't greatly outperform Tim Walz. I admittedly was not happy at first with Trump's selection of Vance as his running mate. I thought there were better options out there, including South Carolina Senator Tim Scott and Florida Senator Marco Rubio. But I will freely admit that Vance greatly exceeded my expectations, and I thought he did a phenomenal job at the debate and showed everyone why Trump chose him as his running mate. Another big news story this week is the port strike affecting almost all of the cargo ports from Maine to Texas, with nearly 45,000 members of the International Longshoremen's Association going on strike at midnight on October 1st. Workers have been campaigning for better wages and specifically clauses in a new contract which would protect them from the increase in automated systems that would replace human jobs. Reportedly, workers had initially turned down offers from the United States Maritime Alliance, or USMX, who represents the major shipping lines, of an increase in wages of over 50% and an increase in benefits. On Thursday, the two sides reached an agreement to suspend the port strike until January. The final offer that the union agreed to was a wage increase of 62%. The International Longshoremen's Association said the union and USMX have reached a tentative agreement on wages and have agreed to extend the master contract until January 15, 2025, to return to the bargaining table to negotiate all other outstanding issues. In other very unsurprising news, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan has made a new filing from Special Counsel Jack Smith that supposedly includes evidence compiled in his investigation into Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Smith's team wrote, quote, "When the defendant lost the 2020 presidential election, he resorted to crimes to try to stay in office." In a statement released by Stephen Cheong, a spokesman for Trump's campaign, he called the release unconstitutional and falsehood-ridden. He has also said, quote, "This entire case is a partisan, unconstitutional witch hunt that should be dismissed entirely, together with all of the remaining Democrat hoaxes." I don't think this is any surprise as we near Election Day that the political attacks on Trump continue. Speaking of the parties in the 2024 election, Kamala Harris's husband, second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, has been accused of physically assaulting a former girlfriend in May 2012. The alleged incident occurred while they were attending an event at the Cannes Film Festival in France. It remains to see if any legal action will be taken following these allegations. In our final news story of the week, cleanup from the devastation following Hurricane Helene continues, and extremely disturbing reports that the federal government has seized and redirected donations and aid from private citizens, as well as unconfirmed reports that residents of the town of Chimney Rock in North Carolina have been told in a town meeting that their town was being bulldozed and all of their land was being seized by the federal government. There have been conspiracy theories floating around about there being a massive lithium mine in the areas of destruction in North Carolina, and that not only had the government planned on seizing the land, but they were actually purposely manipulated the path and track of Helene using weather modification devices. Of course, these are just theories I'm sharing. I won't speculate on any of this anymore for the time being until we have some time to sort through the facts and the evidence. But I will be doing a show very soon about weather modification, so stay tuned. We'll be discussing this subject much, much more very soon. All right, that's a short roundup of some of this week's big news. Let's get to this week's topic of the show. Do you believe in UFOs and alien life outside of our planet? Well, I do. This is something that, as a Christian, I struggle with. Admittedly, although I always have been, and always will be a believer, I'm not a theological person, and I'm not one of those who has a deep knowledge and understanding of Scripture. But from my research, it is my understanding that aliens are not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. But to that perspective, there is also nothing to say they don't and can't exist. The Bible says that Jesus is the only way to heaven, and for me, whether or not aliens do exist will never change my wholehearted belief in God Almighty and in Jesus Christ, His only Son, our Lord, who died for our sins. So with that said, we will explore the possibility that aliens do exist and that the decades of evidence from all over the globe concerning UFOs and extraterrestrials is too overwhelming to ignore. I don't remember exactly what age I first became interested in the paranormal, and particularly in UFOs. I'll admit that I am a closet nerd, and I've always been a sci-fi fan, Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever, you name it. My current favorite TV show is The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel, and I love any of those kind of shows and documentaries that explore the possibilities of life outside of Earth and interdimensional travel. So take the rest of the show and the topics and evidence I present to you how you will. You can choose to believe that alien life does not exist. You can believe that it unequivocally does, or you can have the mindset that I do that it can and probably does. UFO, or UAPs, as they are now predominantly called, stands for Unidentified Flying Objects and Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. The latter is the generally accepted modern-day term for them now in the media and the scientific community. The question of whether alien life exists dates back to ancient times. It has long been a debate between philosophers, scientists, and theologians. It was early in the 19th century that with the evolution of modern-day communication that people started to better report and document sightings. But it was in 1947 that a pilot named Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane in Washington State near Mount Rainier, which, by the way, is a well-known modern-day UFO hotspot. He claimed to see a glimmer or shine and was concerned he might collide with another aircraft. He described 9 odd-shaped vessels flying in formation he later described to a reporter as flying like a saucer would if you skipped it over water. It is from this interview that journalists of the time coined the phrase flying saucers. A Gallup poll taken 6 weeks after the Kenneth Arnold report claimed that 90% of Americans had by that time heard the term flying saucer. Later the same year as the Kenneth Arnold sightings was the famed Roswell incident that I'm sure anyone who's ever heard the term UFO has probably heard about. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel came across wreckage near an Army airfield in Roswell, New Mexico. The government issued a statement saying they had recovered a flying saucer, but later retracted their statement, claiming it was instead a downed weather balloon. In the 50s, not long after the Roswell incident, there were reports of bodies falling from the skies in New Mexico that witnesses claimed looked like aliens, which were supposedly quickly picked up by military vehicles. The Air Force used these dummy drops to help develop new ways to help pilots survive falls, but believers attested this too to be a government cover-up. In 1948, Project Sign, or Project Saucer, was an official government study of UFOs by the United States Air Force. The goal of the project was to collect, evaluate, and distribute within the government all information relating to UFO sightings on the premise that they might represent a national security concern. In 1949, the Air Force initiated Project Grudge, which for all intents and purposes was a disinformation campaign to try to convince the American public that UFOs constituted nothing unusual or extraordinary. They would try to explain away sightings such as conventional craft, balloons, weather phenomena, planets, etc. In 1951, the Air Force officially initiated Project Blue Book. Second probably only to Roswell, any UFO enthusiasts have probably heard of and know all about Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was the code name for the Air Force study of UFOs from 1952 to 1969. Headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, which, by the way, to this day is rumored to be a facility where UFOs have been stored and even reverse engineered. Its stated goal was to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security and analyze UFO-related data. These are the official government organizations and reports that have been declassified and that the government has admitted to. As we all know, the government has been continuously investigating UFOs for the last 75 plus years. In 2017, the New York Times released a story titled Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program. The report detailed government research and black budget money given to entrepreneur billionaire Robert Bigelow and his company Bigelow Aerospace and NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, in its investigation into the UFO phenomenon. Robert Bigelow is the former owner of Skinwalker Ranch in Utah and has worked closely with the government to investigate other properties as well. It is also talked about an encounter during about 2 F-A-18 Hornet pilots that had with a Tic Tac UFO off the coast of California, a story which has since garnered a lot of attention and has been the subject of a lot of TV interviews and documentaries, which, if you haven't seen the video, it is very compelling evidence. The Tic Tac-shaped UFO has been documented all across the world. This leads me to have a discussion on the subject. If there are actual alien craft, what do they look like? The most commonly reported UFO for the last 100 years is always the round saucer-shaped UFO. But there have been reports of sightings of triangle-shaped, cigar-shaped, diamond-shaped, rectangular-shaped, and even UFOs that look like fireballs in the sky. It's even been suggested that some UFOs are actually physical, biological entities themselves. There was an episode I saw of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, which is a spinoff show to The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, in which a man in Fayetteville, North Carolina, actually speaks to glowing orbs and communicate with them. Of course, with this show and most all of them, we'll never know how much is dramatized and greatly exaggerated, but it does seem to offer compelling evidence from reputable people that the guy actually has some kind of weird connection to the orbs. He claims that they live in the earth and have been here for a very long time. One thing is for certain, in almost all of the sightings of UFO crafts, they seem to defy the known laws of physics, and almost everyone reports hearing little to no noise. I think it's a safe assumption, being that they generate little to no noise, that they are using some kind of anti-gravity propulsion system. Since the government probably will never reveal everything they truly know about extraterrestrials and alien craft, I guess we'll never know which ones are truly alien craft or just government technology. It's well known that government technology is usually 20 to 30 years ahead of what we Americans know to exist. It's my opinion that a great deal of actual sightings are actually our advanced tech, or that of a foreign country that is either being tested or used to monitor both the American people as well as other countries. Another theory about the movement and propulsion systems of UFOs is they bend the laws of physics and somehow manipulate space and time. Many people believe that UFOs don't even come to our planet via outer space, but instead utilize some kind of portals or wormholes to travel to and from our planet to other planets or even in between different dimensions. This is one of the most fascinating things to me about watching The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel. And no, by the way, I'm not getting paid to advertise for them. Just figured I would throw that out there, since you'll probably hear me mention that show quite a few times discussing UFO and the paranormal. There are a couple places on Skinwalker Ranch that have been shown to probably have wormholes. If any of you think this is extremely far-fetched, note that Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientific minds of our time, proposed the existence of wormholes in his theory of relativity in 1935. Countless eyewitnesses have witnessed UFOs appearing and disappearing, and Native Americans and early indigenous people have been recording and telling stories about the existence of wormholes for a very, very long time. Scientists have theorized that traversable Lorentzian wormholes would allow travel from one part of the universe to another very quickly. So could this help explain how UFOs come to our planet? It's my opinion that the government knows far more on this subject than we will be led to believe. It's also my opinion that the government is housing extraterrestrial craft and technology, and possibly even extraterrestrial biological entities or aliens themselves. There have been conspiracy theories about countless underground government facilities that could be housing such craft and entities. Everyone, even non-UFO believers and enthusiasts, has heard of Area 51. Area 51 is supposedly located at Groom Lake in southern Nevada, although in recent years it's been suggested the government has moved most of the top secret and critical operations to a new facility due to the overwhelming interest it has received in the last 20 or so years. It makes sense to move a lot of it away from the public eye, even though the government has annexed a lot of the land and the surrounding area so that people couldn't set up on any of the outlying ridges and see down into the valley and get a view of the facility. Area 51 is probably the most well-known government facility where supposedly alien beings and craft are being held and reverse engineered. The government has repeatedly admitted that top-secret government technology has been developed there for years. There's also a conspiracy theory about there being a government base near Dulce, New Mexico, somewhere under the Archuleta Mesa, where alien-human hybrids are supposedly being developed and human and animal experience are performed. Supposedly, there are multiple different alien species inside the base, and conspiracy theorists and whistleblowers have claimed the base is 7 stories underground. I don't know what to think of stories such as this, but one of the whistleblowers who first started making public claims about the base supposedly committed suicide while touring the country and talking about his supposed experiences and involvement with the base. I will be doing a future episode about child trafficking and the involvement of Hollywood actors and world elite, and in almost every case I researched, I found that when people know things that government and world elites are doing clandestinely and maliciously, that they tend to mysteriously commit suicide. More often than not, these people have families. You just don't hear about people with families who have children and loved ones who have never had any history of strange or psychotic behavior committing suicide. So, to me, this absolutely loses credibility of the claims about the base. But Area 51 and the rumored Dulce base are not the only 2 suspected bases. Mount Rainier in Washington State, the site of the Kenneth Arnold sighting in 1947, has long been rumored to be harboring an alien base, and there have been thousands of reported sightings in that area. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio for years has been reported to be the location where recovered alien craft are first taken by U.S. government before being shipped off to Area 51 or elsewhere. Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, Antarctica, Fujian Lake in China, Mount Denali in Alaska, and Catalina Island off California are all UFO hotspots and reported locations that could be housing underground and underwater bases. Another conspiracy theory that a friend recently made me aware of is that of the Black Knight satellite. According to some conspiracy theorists, the Black Knight satellite is either a probe or craft that has been orbiting Earth for around 13,000 years. Claims are that during the 1899 radio experiments of Nikola Tesla, he heard radio signals from space that he believed was communication in the form of numbers, since they are considered a universal language. The theory has intensified after photos of a mysterious black object were taken during the first space shuttle mission to the International Space Station in 1998. NASA has called the object space debris and says it is more than likely a thermal blanket that broke loose during that mission. I guess no one knows for sure what the mysterious object photographed in 1998 really is, but it still continues to fascinate astronomers and conspiracy theorists alike. With the development of the internet and social media, UFO reports have exploded exponentially over the last decade. Much as paranormal researchers have become very popular, ufologists and UFO researchers are now a very large and prominent group. There are countless groups and organizations dedicated to the research, reporting, and exploration of the UFO phenomenon. The largest and most well-known groups are MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, the SETI Institute in California's Silicon Valley, the National UFO Reporting Center, or NUFORC, and the Center for UFO Studies, COFOS. Headquartered in Cincinnati, MUFON is the largest and most well-known of all of them, and actually has a large database of reported UFO sightings. They have a team of investigators that will actually travel to investigate credible sightings all over the country. MUFON claims to have over 4,000 members worldwide, with chapters and representatives in over 43 countries in all 50 states. One more fascinating thing I want to talk about for a few minutes before we dive into government disclosure is the years of credible reports of UFOs being spotted over and actually shutting down nuclear missile test and launch sites. UFOs were frequently sighted during World War II by U.S. pilots who referred to them as Foo Fighters. From my research, it seems that UFOs are drawn to wars and weapons of war. Are they monitoring us and preparing to stop us from destroying ourselves through the use of nuclear weapons? In recent years, it seems almost as if they are stalking our carrier groups and military bases. The government confirmed the Nimitz sighting we discussed already in 2004. How many more sightings have there been that the government hasn't told us about? I'm willing to bet they are spotted more frequently than we know. Robert Hastings, who is a well-known author and UFO researcher, wrote a book titled UFOs and Nukes: Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapons Sites. He claims he has interviewed over 160 veterans who have witnessed strange things in the skies around nuclear sites. During one such interview, former Air Force Captain Robert Salas, who was at the time stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, claimed several intercontinental ballistic missiles became inoperable at the same time that base security saw a glowing red object about 30 feet in diameter that was hovering over the facility. He claimed that they were in what's called a no-go condition, and they were completely unlaunchable. There have also been multiple reports of UFOs being spotted and chased during NATO war games in which multiple nations simulate a response to a simulated attack on Europe. I'm willing to bet that China and Russia have had similar encounters as they perform similar war games in the Pacific, but of course those we will never know. It isn't only U.S. nuclear facilities and warships that have reportedly seen and had encounters with UFOs. Reportedly so have former presidents of the United States. Both Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter have claimed to have seen UFOs firsthand. Reagan's sighting occurred while he was out flying in a Cessna Citation near Bakersfield, California in 1974. Reportedly, Reagan and his pilot that night reported seeing a strange object several hundred yards behind their plane. They claimed it accelerated and elongated and took off at a 45-degree angle at a fantastic rate of speed. Reagan later said it went straight up into the heavens. Jimmy Carter's sighting occurred in Georgia in 1969. He went into great detail about what he saw, saying there were about 20 of us standing outside of a little restaurant, I believe, a high school lunchroom, and a kind of green light appeared in the western sky. This was right after sundown. It got brighter and brighter, and then it eventually disappeared. It didn't have any solid substance to it. It was just a very peculiar-looking light. None of us could understand what it was. It has since been suggested that what Carter saw was a high-altitude rocket-released barium cloud, but that's not been definitively proven. Carter and Reagan are not the only presidents to have taken a keen interest in UFOs. Bill Clinton was known to have a keen interest in UFOs and reportedly told his attorney general at the time, Webb Hubbell, specifically to find out who killed JFK and are there real UFOs. Clinton even went so far as to respond to a question from a child on a trip to Ireland about UFOs, saying, quote, "No, as far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. And then, quip, and Ryan, if the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know." It has been said that multiple presidents have asked upon taking office about the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrials, and if the government is in possession of any. This brings me to the big question. When, if ever, will we ever know what the federal government knows about UFOs and extraterrestrials? Keep in mind it only takes admission and definitive proof of one true extraterrestrial craft or biological entity. We're getting technical here instead of just saying alien. Besides just saying alien could mean somebody who hopped the U.S.-Mexico border or entered our country illegally another way. Would literally change our world in a moment. Everything we have been told, taught, and believed for all our lives will be turned upside down. The government has confirmed over the course of the last 50 years or so the existence of government-funded programs that investigated UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. SETI has been listening to them for the last 60 years. But it wasn't until 2017 that the government finally somewhat admitted the existence of UFOs with the release of information on ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and its 2021 release of the Preliminary Assessment of Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The latter details the Tic Tac sighting made by the Hornet pilots off the coast of California, as well as states that UAPTF focused on 144 observations of unidentified aerial phenomena by the U.S. Armed Forces, mostly from U.S. Navy personnel. And in July 2023, under the House Committee of Oversight and Accountability, a congressional hearing took place featuring testimony from U.S. fighter pilots Ryan Graves and David Fravor, as well as David Grush. During the hearing, David Grush said that he was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program to which I was denied access, and that he believes the U.S. government is in possession of UAPs based on his interviews with 40 witnesses over 4 years. He also claimed in response to congressional questions that the U.S. has retrieved non-human biological matter from the pilots of the crafts, and that this was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the UAP program I talked to and that are currently still on the program. Since then, in 2023, the Senate passed the UAP Disclosure Act, and in 2024, Biden signed the National Defense Authorization. The newly enacted law requires only the establishment of a government-wide UAP records collection, that government offices transfer UAP records to the collection, and that records be reviewed for disclosure or not against a set of criteria under which public release could be postponed. So basically, any real disclosure is locked up in political red tape, and nothing new of note has been released to the public. So we've talked a lot about UFOs and UFO disclosure on this episode. I guess until we see with our own eyes an extraterrestrial and an extraterrestrial craft, we will never know if they truly exist. But I always support the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think there's just too much evidence for too long for UFOs to not exist. I think the U.S. and many other countries have UFO programs and have had them in place for quite some time. I think 100% they know far more than they are telling us. I believe the universe is too vast for us to be the only life out there. If indeed they do, it would change everything we know about our lives and existence. Are we ready for such a revelation? And what would be the ripple effects on our planet and society? I guess these are questions that will only be answered with definitive proof. Until then, as the iconic poster on the wall in Fox Mulder's office in the basement of the CIA says, I want to believe. Thank you once again for listening. Please remember, if you haven't already, to like and follow the show on Facebook, X, and Truth Social. And you can also reach out via email at thepppodcast@yahoo.com. Even better, please share and let your friends or anyone with similar interests and beliefs know about the show and where to find it. Until next week, I hope you will tune in for my next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.